Got another murder for you.
Mr. LaFoe? What brings you here?
I don't know who I am.
You don't know who you are?
You know who you are?
There are different versions of me in the world.
I think someone's trying to kill me.
Different victim, same body.
Everybody thought it was you.
Is he a relative?
What do you need? It's good to need people.
Theodore Wax knows what happened to Daniel. If he really is at the Hotel Babylon, then I will find Theodore Wax.
You'd be wise to leave well enough alone with Mr. LaFoe. Tampering tangles the tissue.
Who's there?
Come this way. You're a time traveler.
I was 20 years old. This beautiful girl. He appeared on the road out of nowhere.
If it wasn't for you, we'd still be together.
The universe is not about you.
You look so much like him.
Parallel realities, quantum superpositions. You fragmented into about 7 different versions of yourself. One of them happened to be a psychopathic killer.
The past is a dangerous place.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fandom Forum. I'm your host, Joe Compton, and we are here to talk about the sci-fi thriller 7 Splinters in Time. And joining me to talk about this great movie today are...
Well, I'm Anita Stewart. I write stuff, usually horror and fantasy, and I'm a big sci-fi geek, so I'm glad to be here to talk about the movie.
Hi, I'm Deidre. I am a writer of young adult fantasy for now, and I love sci-fi.
I am JB Taylor. I am an author of horror, sci-fi, and the occasional fantasy story, and I'm a big sci-fi nerd. Star Trek over Star Wars. Don't at me.
I'm Jeff, obviously. I've known Joe for quite a long time, and I just jumped on the opportunity because, sci-fi has always been a big part of my life, and along with horror and everything else. I'm not a writer, I'm more of a musician. So,
hello, everyone. I'm Gino Kubo. I am a romance author, even though some people say my book is women's lit, but I stand by the fact that it's a romance book. Though it's been categorized as women's lit in Amazon. I'm also a fantasy writer. I do indie movie reviews on GoIndieNow, and I am a huge movie buff.
My name is Sarah Berman. I am an author, usually fantasy, sci-fi, and getting into the punks. So there you go. And I have a supreme fetish for little-known movies that fall into the sci-fi paranormal categories.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm glad then that we're all here. It sounds like everybody was real excited to see this. The movie we're talking about is 7 Splinters in Time. It is a film about a man named Darius LaFoe who is trying to solve the mystery of where the last 10 years of his life has gone. And basically through that, we get the experience through his eyes. And I wanted to start by asking everybody, how would you characterize Darius LaFoe for somebody who asks you what is the main character?
He's very much almost a blank slate type of character in that his whole journey is about finding himself, and so there's not very much in the way of characterization because of that.
I disagree. I think it's not about him finding himself. I think he's basically on a mission to find the truth and what's out there. It's almost when I tried to explain this movie to a friend of mine, I kind of almost put the character as a 12 Monkeys Bruce Willis kind of thing.
There you go.
So
I agree. He's also determined in a way because he, like you said, he wants to find out the truth. But it's sort of like he sort of deconstructing himself and rebuilding himself back up.
Yeah, that's how I saw it. The first 2 words that came to mind was lost but determined. He just wants to know who he is, and really he wants to, fill in the blanks, as someone else said. Lost is the first word that came to mind for sure. Definitely determined too.
What struck you all when you first watched this movie? What was your first reaction to not the reveal stage, but just kind of when it started to happen and you were getting engrossed in it? What was the first thing that came to mind? What were you feeling? Were you along for the ride? Were you trying to solve the mystery? Was it more of like, wow, these characters are interesting? Where were you guys at when this thing first began to unfold for you?
Don't know about anybody else, but I kind of chuckled when they had the defense attorney from My Cousin Vinny pop in there. I hadn't seen him for a while. But no, I was actually getting engrossed in the characters because I was expecting not to put down pulp science fiction, but just I just wasn't expecting known characters that were going to be in the movie. And of course I recognized just about all of them from something else.
The close-ups I thought were really good on everybody. The way the screenshots were real close on everybody, which I found sucked me in right away. And then I have a laugh at the Twilight filter, the coloring. But it kind of distracted me at first, and I was like, oh, really? We're going to go with this blue? But the storyline sucked me in enough that I got over it.
Yeah. I loved the imagery of the whole thing and the shifting images, which I really liked, because the parallel timelines, whole things, what's going on sort of thing. I really, really liked that.
Yes.
I was very impressed with how they could shoot it, the angles and the trippiness of it with, no budget. I mean, that's not easy to do. It's just the kind of how it messes with your mind a little bit. Yeah, I just couldn't get over how cleverly shot it was. It could have easily have been gimmicky and just corny, but it wasn't. It managed to nail each scene just right.
What do you think about the acting overall? What drew you in? Who surprised you?
I absolutely love the character of Babs.
Nice.
I thought that she was nail on the head. It seemed really out of place at first, and then at the end, it's just like, yep, that's
yep,
beautiful.
I like the librarian. It's my favorite character in the whole film, and I mentioned it in the review I did as well for this movie. I really love the character. I love the actor as well.
I think overall, they all did a great job. Like I said, I was really surprised to see some well-known names in there. And yeah, Austin Pendleton. He is one of the good ones too.
So, being self-proclaimed sci-fi, I'll use your terms for the better word, geeks or nerds. Would you say this is a pretty good representation of where sci-fi can go in the future, or is it an homage to sci-fi of the past? Where would you guys rank this in terms of its sci-fi-ness?
Well, I think there's definitely, you can see influences in the film from previous sci-fi.
Timeless quality to it. The story does not really focus on any one time or even in any specific place. It's something that, I can see it being viewed in 100 years and people can still relate to it.
I think it's where the genre of sci-fi can go in the indie sphere. I don't think it's going to be mainstream. And there is, I would say there is about a good 80% chunk that is homage, all the way back to the 80s style sci-fi, and even in the early 2000s. But that whole dark sci-fi with minimalist technology kind of thing, I think that's more of an homage.
So we, as the story unfolds and we start to get the reveal and we start to realize what's really going on, and it's very open the way that they reveal it. It's not like it's like it's a big surprise maybe, but it's not like this guarded secret, right? It's very open, which I found kind of fascinating in that respect. Did anybody else maybe, I don't know how many people have watched it multiple times, if you watched it multiple times or not, but maybe from the first time were you kind of taken aback by it, and then the second time kind of embracing it? How would you characterize your feelings when the reveal happens?
I thought it felt very organic.
I felt it complete. Like that whole thing. Like if it was not done, even though it was hinted at and it was open, if it was not in the movie, I don't think I would have enjoyed it. It completed it basically.
Yeah, some stories can be just fine with an open ending, or like it's sort of up to you kind of thing. But this film needed that, wrap up.
It also felt good to have the wrap up. Like, I was happy that they wrapped it up, but I didn't feel, I was kind of, some of it I expected and some of it I feel had been done before, but I still enjoyed it because of the way it was done and then the wrap up. So it was fully enjoyable that way.
And I thought the progression of the film and everything, it was very natural and it didn't feel forced or anything. So I really enjoyed it.
I thought if I could go back to that very moment.
Going back to the time travel technology itself, how do you guys think? Because usually when you see time travel and you look at like old movies where they have these huge machines and everything like that, but the way it's done here is more subtle. So what do you guys think?
Yeah. I don't think that you necessarily need something big, something huge. I mean, if you're talking about future tech, you can, theoretically manage like a wormhole or create some sort of rift in space-time. You don't need like a big whomping machine. So I really dug how subtle it was. I mean, they could have easily went over the top with it.
I think the more complicated you make it, the more you're going to lose people trying to follow it, because God knows there's tons of paradoxes in time travel, and if you try to explain all of that at once, people are just going to go, "Oh, shut up." You make it subtle, you make it, just blend in better and not complicate it too much, then you have a winner.
Well, with the way that they explain time travel in the first place, by using quantum theory, it literally does not need anything else.
Right.
Quantum theory already encompasses time travel. It's about accessing it, and that's how they explained it. That's why they didn't need anything complicated.
All you really need to do with science fiction, and this is what I like about science fiction, is you don't have to go, I mean, you can go hardcore and explain every minute detail. It's like completely George R.R. Martin. The way he did with the fantasy, he goes into every detail. But with sci-fi, or you can just give a like base level plausible explanation and just run with it. And that's what this film did, and I think it works for everyone. You don't have to be into one specific genre or another to dig it.
It feels more believable on a smaller scale. I kept watching the movie thinking, oh, if this was a big production, they'd have done it this way, or if they would have done it that way, and it would have been more predictable and possibly more boring. But this way, it was like real.
It would have been Terminator Genesis as well. It would have been.
All right, let's get off of the Terminator test. You're gonna crush its throat, man.
It's the red wedding for Terminator Genesis.
Jeez.
Wow.
I totally see what you're saying, Deidre. That's a great point.
They say I'm not dead, that I'm just a splinter in time. How is it possible to bring order out of memory? I should like to begin at the beginning, like a weaver at his loom. I should like to say, this is the place to start. There can be no other. The headlines read, double suicide. An older gentleman and a younger one found side by side. But I know the real story. and my end is my beginning. Now, here's where it starts to get really strange. Tim's was right. I did see things from time to time. More and more, the world didn't hold in place. Like a patient's fever dream.
How about going from, I mean, for all extensive purposes, we're watching this from a first-person perspective, right? So what did you think of that idea? Did you think that was kind of interesting that we were kind of following along with the main character and kind of living through his eyes?
I thought it was brilliant, particularly when combined with the fact that he was essentially right off the bat an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. It was very unreliable narrator, and it had kind of an existential vibe to it too, which kind of gave the first person a little difference from what you'd normally see.
Yeah, I agree. They made it shaky enough where you didn't mind the, how it's done.
We get a sort of conclusion with this movie in a certain respect, but if you saw it continuing on, what do you think you would like to see from the next film if there was a next film?
I actually think the prequel is the only way to really go with it, because I don't see how you could pick up with the sequel go with. I think that speaks to how nicely that they wrapped the story up, because there's no one that, I mean, the characters are good and they would make a sequel, kind of fun to watch, but unnecessary.
Yeah, you need a little backstory on some of them.
Yeah, and with the prequel, there's tons of material to work with. I mean, there's so much you can do.
Yeah, a prequel. I agree completely with you. A prequel to expand on the character backgrounds and the character development more, but I think it could be done because just the way this film is filmed. I think it could be done as a sequel with prequel flashbacks.
I'm kind of torn on that. I really liked the characters and I would like to see more, but I think I would prefer to see like the librarian and the circus situation rather than a sequel, because honestly, I didn't see any place in that plot where you could put in a sequel that would carry on that particular story without undermining how the ending was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was really tight, and
I think
that's something that I look for really closely.
Nice.
I was saying job well done, and I would have liked even more part of the story. Everyone wants a prequel, but if he had developed more relationship with Babs or relationship with the librarian in that story, I would have been happy with that as well. But really, it was very well done overall.
I definitely agree with the prequel talk, and I want to see more of the crazy guy with the flying steampunky thing. That was awesome. It was like 2 seconds long. It wasn't long enough. That scene. That was cool.
Sometimes you wake up in the morning and you're like this. You're like a lizard on a road.
How would you tell somebody you know about this movie? What would you say?
A trippy existential sci-fi noir with touches of Legion, Memento, and Blade Runner.
Tossing a little bit of John Woo.
Yeah.
Blade Runner. Blade Runner.
Well, no, the noir vibe of Blade Runner.
I would say Blade Runner, 12 Monkeys style movie that's sci-fi and enough of a mystery that you can enjoy it.
I'd probably use sci-fi last as a description, but I'd say it's a good mystery, kind of an indie mystery. A little romance and yeah, some sci-fi. I think I'd probably mention the time travel, just because it is the confusing aspect of it, without giving too much away.
Most of the people I know like a wide swath of movies, so I'd cross genres and say it has the whimsical narration of Amelie, the time travel of Looper, the noir feel of Dark City, and is just really completely worth your time.
One of the images, so Gabe thinks in images, which I love, and I love that he knows what he wants. As a DP, like you want to work with the director who knows what they want. So your job is to sort of help get that up there, right? Yeah. So the audience can share that same vision when they're watching it. And so this is a typical conversation I would have with Gabe. I have a shot, and he's like, you see the shot of a guy in a suit and water is pouring out of his chest, right? So I'm like, okay, I can see that, and then the night before, as we're loading stuff in my car, like cramming a dolly into my wife's Volkswagen Golf, I get a phone call from Gabe. How are we going to make the water pour out of his chest? And I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. It's just two of us, right? So I was like, okay, do you have a pump? He's like, I don't have a pump. He lives in an apartment in Brooklyn, right? I'd be more likely to have a pump living in the suburbs. So I thought about it, and this is the problem. So this is what you do as a filmmaker, right? So I go, okay, essentially we're making a beer bomb, right? So I'm like, we need a C-stand and a funnel and a bucket of water. And so here we are, a block over from the New York Marathon, guerrilla shooting 35 millimeter in Brooklyn, with his friend Coben. Coben. Yeah, so his friend Coben in a suit who just sort of walked up and was there, I'm like, oh, he's here, and we run some clear tubing up in the.
Nobody knows what was going on.
He had no idea what was going on. Yeah, we're immediately undoing his shirt and putting his hand up his shirt and putting the tube up his shirt, and so we traded off. So we're very much, we don't have any sort of ego about the ownership. He gave us a director that I will let operate because he knows what he wants. And it's actually easier. He's a little shorter than I am, so he knows what he wants, and we go quicker that way. And I've hired him to handhold for films that I've done as well. So it's just like I trust him.
Sometimes I'll just.
Yeah, sometimes we just hold him. So we traded off on it. I honestly don't know which one ended up in the film, but at one point, one of us would be pushing this spider dolly on a rubber track while pulling focus for themselves.
Well, we were pushing the dolly and pulling focus.
Yeah, so I was pushing on the first take. I'm pushing the dolly essentially with my face on the eye cup while pulling focus to keep Coben. And we had a decent stop, so it wasn't that bad. While the other person, and that's like my stupid human trick is being able to like pull really smooth dolly jib shots. But so I'm pushing the dolly with my face, pulling focus while Gabe is furiously dumping buckets of water into this funnel. So that the water pumps in. I think we might have nailed that on the first take, actually. Yeah, and meanwhile, runners are going by and the police are there, and then later I think we ended that day, and it was an exciting first day because we were having fun. We were doing what we loved on our terms.
The adage of especially the canvas film was punk rock.
Yeah, sure, you can feel it.
Fuck 'em, we're gonna do it.
Yeah. We started, and it's been kind of a running joke between us. Because one of the other things I love working with Gabe is I will figure out, we'll talk extensively. We'll go through every single shot in the film, sometimes on the phone, sometimes in person, whatever, and then we make the thing, right?
Right.
And then after we make the thing, I realize because it's so subconscious. Like, so I know what the film is about consciously, and I have an idea of what I know what the film is about thematically and all that stuff. But it's after we get it, looking at it, and I start to realize what the film is really about.
Sure.
And in this film, and I think we both sort of realized that.
Do you think that's your documentary background?
I mean, maybe. I think because we both do doc, yeah. But I think part of it was like
because that's typically how you discover a doc, right?
Of course, in the cut, right? Yeah. You discover it in the cut, and we realized that in some ways it was sort of an elegy for film, an elegy for film. And
that discovery came. I think you were the one.
I realized that just looking at the textures and
stuff. We were mourning the death of film.
Yeah. As we were making film.
Short ends of 8mm.
Yeah, because we started in 35mm negative, and the very last shot that we did, and it was a pickup shot, it was a shot we needed. It was the scene where Greg Luca is looking at the coaster, with the name of the hotel on.
Oh
The
yeah,
plot point of the
sure.
film.
Yeah.
And
those are actually my hands.
his hands playing the piano. He came to my school, and we were just picking up shots, a bunch of little pickups all day in different formats, a bunch of different formats that day. And one of the things that I think if we could have had it, our druthers on that shot, it would have been
Like an old tube VHS
an old
camera.
an old Satacom tube, which are none of them work, right?
Is that why you guys did the filtering that you did on the flashback, kind of giving it a little nod to the film?
Yeah, there's some VHS.
Right.
films,
Yeah, I mean the flashback stuff is all shot on film.
Yeah.
And the sort of montage of the relationship. We had
You even have a cigarette burn, I believe, in one.
Yeah, that's
and that was
on Kodak.
Wait, on Greg's stuff. Greg's stuff?
No,
I
on
know
one
what
of
you're
the
talking about.
flashbacks.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're
on
talking
the
about
flashback.
the film burn. Yeah, that was I think I shot that on bullets. Maybe.
Yeah, and so I knew, just from doing this, right, so one of the things that the video cameras always had was a sort of an enormous depth of field. So I think at that day we were shooting some pickups on like the Red Epic or something, and or the FS7, Sony FS7. So we were shooting a full frame camera, and that wasn't going to work, right, for that. So I'm like, what do I have on the shelf, basically? What do I have handy that I can get that enormous depth of field? And I reached into my pocket and took out my phone. So we started in 35 millimeter, and we finished with an iPhone 6.
That's awesome.
The very last shot of the movie that
Kind of love it, right?
17 different formats.
At least 17 different formats.
What if you're able to go back and replay the same way you rewind a film to see a part that you wanted to see again, all over again? What if time could work that way? What if time could work in the way that you could go back in time and find that one person who was the one that got away, or the one that you got away from, and you could say to them, I know what I did wrong. Do you know what you did wrong? Can we agree on what we did wrong? I think back to things that have come before, and I wonder, what makes then so different than now? Because if I had the ability to go back to then, I wouldn't think of then as then. I would think of it as now. So is then now? And even now is what was to be back then when I was thinking it was now.